Welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here because, well, today we are diving into a truly fascinating concept. Just a quick note before we jump in, all the audio and video content we're exploring today comes directly from Shui Feng, the founder of Life Chain Yuan. We're going to explore his completely unique philosophy on finding true peace and fulfillment. How? By discovering and embracing what he calls your innate destiny. In a world that constantly tells us we can be absolutely anything we want to be, Shui Feng's writings offer a totally different, honestly thought-provoking perspective. He argues that our paths are actually predetermined by our inborn traits. And true happiness, it doesn't come from endless striving, but from profound acceptance. All right, let's get started. Okay, let's dive into this by looking at one of the most famous timelines of aging in human history. It was laid out by the ancient philosopher Confucius. He famously said that at 15 he set his heart on learning. At 30 he stood firm, at 40 he had no doubts, but it wasn't until he hit 50 that he knew the mandate of heaven. 50 years. That really sets a philosophical tone for us today, doesn't it? It implies that understanding your ultimate purpose or destiny, well, it isn't something you just wake up knowing in your 20s. It's a lifelong journey of discovery. But what exactly was Confucius talking about here? And how does Life Shen Yuan philosophy interpret this today? Let's take a look. According to Zhu Feng's writings, heaven's mandate, or Tianming in Chinese, isn't just some vague concept of fate. It's very specifically a heaven-bestowed mission. It's your completely unchangeable, inborn set of abilities, and, just as importantly, your limitations. In the Life Chain Yuan worldview, your Tianming is literally baked into your DNA from the very beginning. It dictates what you'll be brilliant at and, what you'll inevitably fail at if you try to force it. Section 1. Kings and Wise Advisors. To really cement this idea, Shui Feng looks back at the grand sweep of Chinese history. He points out some of the most brilliant minds in history. We've got legendary advisors like Zhang Zia, Zhang Lang, and Zhuge Liang. And then we have the kings they served, Zhou Wenwang, Liu Bang, and Liu Bei. Now, according to Shui Feng, the advisors were arguably much smarter and wiser than the kings they served. So you gotta ask, why didn't these brilliant strategists just usurp the throne and rule themselves? Well, Shui Feng explains it's because these wise men fundamentally knew their Tianming. They knew their exact innate mandate was to be a counselor, a strategist, an advisor, not a king. And this brilliantly illustrates a striking metaphor Shui Feng uses to explain this divide regarding innate talent. He writes that the talents required to be a supreme leader versus a brilliant advisor belong to two completely different realms. Think about it. A bird soaring in the sky is magnificent, right? But if that same bird decides to enter the water, not only will it be completely useless, it's going to face total disaster. Operating outside of your innate talents, like an advisor suddenly deciding they want to be a king, leads to absolute ruin, according to this philosophy. Section 2. The Laws of Nature. Shifting from the realm of human history to the natural world, we see that heaven's mandate is a fundamental law. Peach trees yield peaches. Apricot trees yield apricots. Roosters crow. Hens lay eggs. In the philosophy of Life Chain Yuan, everything in the universe is completely innate. Shui Feng argues that if you read the wordless book of heaven, meaning, if you just observe the natural world around us, you'll see that things are born a certain way and literally cannot be altered through later learning or cultivation. A peach tree can't just study hard and suddenly decide to produce apricots. It's just not in its mandate. Section 3. The Cost of Defiance. So what happens when we humans try to fight our innate nature? Well, Shui Feng outlines a pretty stark contrast. Whoever goes against their heaven's mandate, essentially defying their destiny, is going to face a life full of obstacles, disaster, and constant frustration. But when you align with your destiny, life is generally smooth sailing. True peace, according to Shui Feng, comes from radical acceptance of your lot in life. It means eating your simple cornbread with immense joy and absolutely zero envy for someone else's delicacies. It means living happily in your thatched cottage without constantly desiring your neighbor's high-rise mansion. It means seeing someone become a massive internet influencer or a wealthy business owner and resisting the urge to blindly imitate them simply because that is not your specific mandate. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Shui Feng applies this concept of staying in your lane directly to modern history. He points to Zhou Enlai, a highly prominent figure in 20th century China. Shui Feng claims that Zhou Enlai survived the intense political turmoil of his era specifically because he deeply knew his place as a servant and advisor, not as the ultimate ruler. Shui Feng notes that Zhou Enlai paid his respects at the tomb of Zhang Liang, that's the ancient advisor we mentioned earlier, rather than the tomb of the king. By acknowledging his mandate as a counselor, He avoided the tragic, violent fates of others who overstepped their bounds and tried to seize supreme power.
Section 4. Xu Feng's Personal Journal.
So how does one actually apply this to themselves? Xu Feng turns the mirror on his own life here. In his writings, he neutrally reflects on his own surname, Zheng. He came to a profound personal realization that for him, the surname meant he could never be a successful politician. If he tried, he believed he would achieve only infamy. He also realized he could never be a successful businessman, feeling destined for poverty if he pursued wealth. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't just a dead end. He noted a really crucial detail. Zheng is also traditionally considered the surname of the Jade Emperor, a supreme deity in Chinese mythology. For Xu Feng, this signaled that while the doors to secular power and immense wealth were firmly locked by his destiny, the path to spiritual leadership was wide open. This introspection led to the ultimate revelation about his own limits. He stated, "I am a servant, not a king. I would be a first-class servant." Xu Feng explicitly states he cannot lead a political revolution. He cannot run a profitable enterprise. In fact, he humorously admits that in many worldly aspects, he's basically a fool. But he found his exact purpose in serving others, specifically in guiding people toward what he describes as a beautiful, communist lifestyle in a heavenly realm. By accepting he was purely a servant and a spiritual guide, he found his ultimate effectiveness and peace. Section 5. Finding Your True Self. So, we've looked at ancient history, the laws of nature, and the personal revelations of the founder of Life Shen Yan. Now, I want to ask you this provocative question directly. What is your innate mandate? Are you meant to farm? Then farm honestly. Are you meant to teach? Then teach diligently. Figuring this out is not easy, for sure. Remember Confucius from the very beginning of our explainer? It took him 50 years of life, observing the world and enduring trials and tribulations before he finally understood his heaven-bestowed mission. It takes time, trial and error to discover what you are innately built for, and just as importantly, what you are absolutely not built for. So the crucial point is to be yourself and do not scheme. Xu Feng concludes that the absolute core of the Tianming philosophy is to drop the calculated plots for things that just don't belong to you. Stop imitating the influencers on your feed. Stop trying to force yourself into a mold that nature didn't cast for you. If we follow the Life Shen Wan perspective, the greatest success you can ever achieve isn't conquering the world. It's fully becoming the true innate self you were born to be. If you stopped fighting your nature today, what could you finally become? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.